Well, good evening, everyone. It is Sunday, February the 21st, and I am so glad that you decided to join me for Bible study tonight as we continue our look at the book of Proverbs. You know, we've got tonight, and we've got next Sunday night, and then we are done with Proverbs. I have so enjoyed taking a new, fresh look at the book of Proverbs. I hope that you have too. It never gets old. It is always worth looking at. And I have just gotten so much out of returning to the book of Proverbs. It had been many years since I had done a systematic study through the book of Proverbs. I don't remember when it was. It was probably... it might have been 10 years ago, one of the first books that we studied in a class when I arrived here almost 12 years ago. Can you believe that? And so it was great to go back, take a fresh look at the book of Proverbs. Well, we are in chapter 27, so if you've got your book, your Bible, or your book of Proverbs, chapter 27 is where you want to be. Now, we're not going to be able to finish 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31 today and next Sunday. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at chapter 27 today, tonight, this evening, whenever you're looking at this. And then we're going to skip 28 and 29. We're going to then next week when we're together, just maybe look at the first part of chapter 30. And then we're going to wind it up by taking a look at the last section of chapter 31, the last chapter. And that is, of course, the description of a worthy woman. It is one of the most beautiful and most familiar passages in all of the book of Proverbs, and I certainly want to get to that. And so today, chapter 27. Next week, a little bit of 30 and 31. You know what else I'm excited about? I am excited about the fact that 2 weeks from today, the beginning of March, the first Sunday in March, I'm not just going to be looking at this dark lens. I am going in this room all by myself. I am going to be looking at your faces, and I cannot wait. I cannot even begin to tell you how excited I am about the prospect of being back together again after about 2.5 months or so off in terms of in-person Bible classes. I am so thankful for the fact that we are going to be able to come back together for in-person classes in March. I hope that many of you, that most of you are able to join us. We have plenty of room for social distancing. Please, if you want to wear masks, there are people who wear masks. There is plenty of room for social distancing as we come back together at 5 o'clock on Sunday evenings, and we will begin our study of, the book of Revelation. I'm excited about that. We're going to do that in 2 quarters, and we are, that's another one that I did many, many years ago. I never have actually done it in a classroom setting here at Concord Road in almost 12 years, but I did do it from the pulpit on a Sunday night. And so I did that. I started that lesson or that series. Can you believe this? 9 years ago. I looked back into the archives. It was 9 years ago that I started that series on the book of Revelation. And so a whole bunch of you weren't there 9 years ago. And then I'm going to guess that a lot of you who were there, some dust has accumulated on the book of Revelation over the past 9 years. I've had 4 or 5 people over probably the last 6 months, maybe more like a year, who've asked me about doing a study of the book of Revelation. And so I think it is time to take a look again at that extraordinary book. So that begins 2 weeks from today, live, in person, here at the building, in the auditorium. Of course, we will be live streaming that. If you just can't get out, and if you feel just like you're not ready to get out and not comfortable getting out yet, and then we will be live streaming it. Please join us on live stream if you can't come and be with us in person. Okay. With that said, let's take a look at chapter 27 of Proverbs as we continue to look at a series of instructions that are given to us. Let's start with the first 2 verses, which is all about boasting and pride. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what the day may bring. Let another praise you, and not your own mouth, a stranger, and not your own lips. Okay, verse 1 there, don't boast about tomorrow. You don't know what it's going to bring. Don't be too certain about your future. And the reason is you just can't control what will happen. We all know that. It's okay to make plans. It's okay to prepare. But just understand that there's no reason to talk about it in terms of absolute certainties because you just can't control what happens tomorrow. Number 2, or verse 2 that is, don't be too certain of your own gifts. Don't be too certain about tomorrow. Verse 1, don't be too certain about your own gifts. In verse 2, in other words, hey, limit your self-promotion. Let other people, let another, he says, praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips. Limit your self-promotion. You just perform and let others promote you. Let others praise you. Okay, look at verse 3 and 4. This is about unbearable personalities. A stone, verse 3 says, is heavy and the sand is weighty, but the provocation of a fool is heavier than both of them. Okay, what's he talking about when he says the provocation of a fool? Well, probably the idea, or maybe I should say more, maybe the idea rather than probably. Maybe the idea here is just, seems to be something like general obnoxious behavior or incompetence. That's another thing that could fit this word, general incompetence. Both of these verses, 3 and 4, concern behavior that just can't be, it's hard to endure. You know, you talk about toting around a heavy stone, man, and sand that is weighty. I was watching a travel channel thing on something the other day, and it was talking about how women in Austria back in the day in the salt mines would carry these salt blocks that were like 60 kilograms on their backs and up these down and up these hills. And that sounded impressive, but I wasn't quite sure what 60 kilograms was until I whipped out the cell phone and did a conversion and found out, Googled, hey, how much is 60 kilograms in pounds, and learned that it was 132 pounds. 132 pounds toting that on your back. They had these benches, where that were periodically along the, built along the way, where they could lean, these elevated benches where they could lean back and take the weight of that heavy pack off. That's what this reminds me of. A stone is heavy and the sand is weighty. Man, it's just, nobody wants to tote that around. It's a burden. Well, in the same way, it is a burden to be around people who are just constantly obnoxious or who are just nonstop incompetence. Is just tough. It is just tough. Verse 4, wrath is fierce and anger is a flood, but who can stand before jealousy? The word here, jealousy, is describing a person who's not open to reason and not open to moderation. Again, another trait that is unbearable, to be around people that aren't open to reason, that are extremists. They're not open to moderation. That's why I don't even watch the news hardly anymore. It's like people with a voice of moderation, they don't even get any airtime. Let's just interview the extreme fringes. People who just don't seem to have any openness to reason or moderation. So these are personalities that are unbearable. Don't be like this. Don't be incessantly obnoxious. Don't be extreme in your thinking. They just can't be endured. Okay. Verse 5, better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. A true friend gives time and attention, but it's not always flattering. That's what he's saying here in verses 5 and 6. Better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. A true friend isn't always flattering to us. The ones who love us most sometimes will bruise us in helpful ways. They don't bruise us in hurtful ways. They bruise us in helpful ways, and these bruises, these wounds, if you will do absolutely wonders for us if we accept them in the spirit that they're given. If we accept them in the spirit that they're given. We could take some time. We could look at a couple of examples of that in Scripture, but we don't have the time. But the good wounds of a friend. Look at verse 7. Verse 7. A sated man loathes honey, but to a famished man, any bitter thing is sweet. That's actually a tough one to understand. Even a Hebrew scholar say, yeah, this is kind of tough to understand. Maybe the bitter thing here, but to a famished man, any bitter thing is sweet. Maybe bitter here is talking about wise counsel. It's kind of like there in verse 5 and 6. There are people who love us, who offer us open and honest critique, and it initially hurts. We call it tough love. But it's it's a true friend who can be trusted. Well, so this comes right on the heels of that. Maybe the bitter there are those initial, that counsel that is painful at first, but it offers solid support in hard times. To the famished man, that's the man going through hard times, the famished man, any bitter thing is sweet. Look at verse 8. Like a bird that wanders from her nest, so is a man who wanders from his home. Like a bird who wanders from her nest, so is a man who wanders from home. Listen, you say, I thought birds wandering from nests was a good thing. It is a good thing. And that's the idea here. The idea is we need to seek solid and meaningful relationships that we can turn to in difficult times. And sometimes we're going to see this, and he's going to kind of continue it in verse 10. Sometimes those solid and meaningful relationships, aren't our relatives. They might be found outside of our closest relationships. Look at verse 10. Do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the days of calamity. What do you mean don't go to my brother's house in the days of calamity? My brother's my best friend. Again, the idea here is in the days of calamity, we need to focus on people who have substance. That may not always be our family. We look for substance. We don't just look for familiar things. And so be open to relationships that are relationships of substance. Counsel from solid, meaningful people. Look at verse 9. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, so a man's counsel is sweet to his friend. Again, enjoying the counsel of a friend and paralleling good counsel that is solid, counsel that is reliable, counsel that is ultimately helpful is compared to oil and perfume, enjoying the sweet aroma of perfume. Okay, let's take a look at verse 11. What we have as we start in verse 11 here and go all the way to the end of the chapter in verse 27. This is some fatherly advice that's being given. Oh, by the way, we didn't really finish verse 10 there. Do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother far away. And again, that continues to emphasize, go seek solid, meaningful relationships, and that might not be in your immediate household. Look at verse 11. Be wise, my son, and make my heart glad that I may reply to him who reproaches me. Be wise, make my heart glad that I may reply to him who reproaches me. He's saying, son, you're going to either be a public disgrace to me or you're going to make me proud. You're going to be a disgrace to me or you're going to make me proud. Make me proud. You can even live in such a way to make me proud before my enemies. Make me proud. We need to remember that. We can live in such a way to bring honor to our parents. And it's a beautiful verse. It's a beautiful idea. Be wise, my son, and make my heart glad. Verse 12 and 13. This is teaching on business and fiscal well-being. We've seen a lot of that, teaching on business and fiscal well-being in the Proverbs. Here's a little bit more. Verse 12 and 13. A prudent man sees evil and hides himself. The naive proceed and pay the penalty. The idea here is avoid impulsive and unwise business ventures. A prudent man sees evil and hides himself. He stays away from it. He sees how risky that is. The naive, though, proceed and pay the penalty. My wife was talking to me last night. We were out to eat and sitting at Chick-fil-A, and we were talking about, she was telling me about someone she knows, a colleague in a particular investment that colleague has pursued. And I thought it was so speculative and so risky. And her colleague was bragging about the rewards and the rate of return that she's gotten. Sure. That's why so many people kind of are pulled into it, because of stories like that. But they're so risky. And I said, I think they're a little bit naive there. And and it just reminds me of this. There are schemes and ventures out there that look so promising, but if you stop and think it through and look at the risks as well as the rewards, if it is built on sand, you would be wise to avoid it. And a prudent man sees problems and hides himself, stays away from those things. So avoid impulsive and unwise business ventures. Verse 13, take his garment when he becomes surety for a stranger, and for an adulterous woman hold him in pledge. In other words, don't risk your wealth for the sake of irresponsible companions. Don't risk your wealth for the sake of irresponsible companions. Take his garment when he becomes surety for a stranger. Listen, this person is irresponsible. They have made a pledge. They have guaranteed the loan of a stranger. That's foolish. That is completely foolish. And he's saying basically, no. Don't join him in that. Don't risk your wealth for his irresponsibility. Look at verse 14. He who blesses his friend with a loud voice in the early morning, it will be reckoned a curse to him. Okay. He who blesses with a loud voice early in the morning. Some have suggested that this is probably, first of all, an insincere blessing. There's sincere blessings and there's insincere blessings. The loud voice here would kind of reflect insincerity. But the idea here, it's someone who's doing it for show. Anything done for show is insincere. But the second part of this is not only a loud voice, but also in the morning. That's bad timing. It greets someone when it is convenient to him and not convenient to the recipient. I'm going to praise him now. Well, it's not the right time. Well, it is for me. Well, that is the wrong time. The whole idea here seems to be it's inconsiderate and rude, and it lacks sensitivity. So the idea here is be a person who is considerate, be a person who is sincere, be a person who is sensitive. Look at verse 15 and 16. We've seen this before. We saw it in 21 verse 9. It's almost verbatim. A constant dripping on a steady day and a contentious woman are alike. So once again, contentious and quarrelsome wife is kind of imbued here, but of course the principle goes either way. And the idea here is a quarrelsome person. That's what contentious is all about. Quarrelsome sows discord. It's just, and verse 16 goes with this. He who would restrain her restrains the wind and grasps oil with his right hand. The idea there in verse 16 is that person just wreaks havoc on everything. There are some people by their nature, they just wreak havoc on everything, and quarrelsome people do. They just bring disunity, they bring frustration, they bring resentment, they bring disharmony. They just ruin everything. Everywhere they go, they wreak havoc. Don't be like that. Let's not be like that. Okay, verse 17. Iron sharpens iron. You've heard that one before, right? So one man sharpens another. This is one of the more familiar proverbs. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Interaction with our peers is an education in itself. Iron sharpens iron. Well, we need interaction. Interaction is good. And so interaction with peers, that makes us better. Look at verse 18. He who tends the fig tree will eat its fruit, and he who cares for his master will be honored. Honor is gained by being a faithful employee. That is what that is saying. He who cares for his master will be honored. He who tends the fig tree will eat its fruit. He who cares for his master will be honored. Be a good employee. Be a responsible employee. Be a reliable employee. Be a hardworking employee. Honor is gained by that kind of behavior. Look at verse 19. As in water, face reflects face, so the heart of man reflects man. As in water, face reflects face, so the heart of man reflects man. Let me tell you what that basically means. And I've heard this all my life. When people show you what they are, believe them. When people show you what they are, believe them. Listen, I especially give this counsel to young people. Sometimes they get involved in relationships and they see things that are just a lot of red flags pop up, and they convince themselves that those are anomalies, that person's really not that way. And my counsel is, yes, they are. Yes, they are that way. They are that way. When a person shows you what they are, believe them. People have a basic consistency to them. That's what this says. As in water, face reflects face, so the heart of a man reflects a man. There is a basic consistency in a man, in a person. And so when people show you that, believe them. Believe them. That helps you choose your companions wisely. Not only your companion for life wisely, but your companions on a daily basis wisely. Okay, verse 20. Sheol and Abaddon are never satisfied, nor are the eyes of man ever satisfied. Sheol, of course, is the place of the grave. It's just like the grave just keeps gobbling people up. It's like there's never coming a day when it's like, oh, nobody died today. No, no, no. The grave is always gobbling people up. It is never satisfied. In the same way, greed is never satisfied. Sheol and Abaddon are never satisfied, nor are the eyes of man ever satisfied. So be careful. Be careful. That really is a powerful statement. We have really got to always keep ourselves in check as far as greed goes. And we need to beware of it. Beware of it. It is never satisfied. Don't think that you have so defeated it in your life that you're not vulnerable to it. Beware of greed. Look at verse 21. The crucible is for silver and the furnace for gold, and each is tested by the praise accorded him. One of the quickest and one of the safest ways of assessing character is the person's reputation with those who know him. That is one of the quickest and safest ways to assess a character. The crucible is for silver, the furnace for gold, and each is tested by the praise accorded him. This is why we call people, this is why we check references. And this is why we especially like references of people who have known someone and interacted with them, over a reasonable period of time. Sometimes I've had people ask me for references before that I honestly don't know. I don't know them. And it's one of the hardest things. Now, that hasn't happened a lot, but it has happened in my life. Because, they may need a minister and I'm, the preacher of some family members, preacher where some family members go, and they'll ask me for a reference. And when that has happened in my life, it's been one of the toughest things. I don't like that, to disappoint, but I say, I hate to tell you this. I have this policy that I don't fill out references for people that I really don't know. And, first of all, it puts my reputation on the line. But it also it's not fair to the person, the employer, who is considering hiring them. It's not fair to them. They want to know what this person is like. Well, I can't tell them what this person is like. And, so that's what this is. Each is tested by the praise accorded him. One of the quickest and safest ways to assess character of a person is with those who know him. Hey, we can take this back to, guys and gals looking for dating. Look, if, some guy asks you out, girls, and a lot of your friends and a lot of people come, you don't know this guy, and a lot of their friends come and say, hey, listen, are you sure you want to go out with him? Don't you know that blah, 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 blah. Hey, listen, you better take into consideration those things, their reputation. Okay. Verse 22. Though you pound a fool in a mortar with a pestle along with crushed grain, yet his foolishness will not depart from him. Oh, that's true. It's saying, look, fools and their folly are inseparable. They are inseparable. So again, the idea here is choose your companions wisely. You have this picture of a mortar and a pestle crushing things. Oh, okay. Well, I think that I can make this fool. I can take the fool out of the fool, and so you've got the solution. And the fact of the matter is, fools and their follies are basically inseparable. And so, choose your companions wisely. Again, this goes back to when a person shows you what they are, believe them. Believe them. Verses 23 through 27, it's an instruction poem. And this is the end of chapter 27. It gives the most basic of economic lessons. And the most basic of economic lessons is simply this. Take care of your business, and it's going to take care of you. Let's read it really quickly here. Know well the condition of your flocks. Pay attention to your herds, For riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generation. A flock, a field, a farm, they all need constant care. Verse 25, when the grass disappears, the new growth is seen, and the herbs of the mountain are gathered in. The lambs will be for your clothing, and the goats will bring the price of a field, and there will be goat's milk enough for your food, for the food of all your household, and sustenance for your maidens. Take care of your business, verse 23. Know well the condition of your flocks. Pay attention to your herds. And your business then is going to take care of you. You'll have what you need. Again, it's a great little poem. Gives the most basic of economic lessons. Take care of your business, and it's going to take care of you. Okay. So ends chapter 27 of Proverbs, and so ends the next to the last class in this book. Again, as I told you before, we will have one more class. We'll take a look at the first part of chapter 30, then the last part of chapter 31. Thanks again for tuning in tonight. I hope you'll tune in next Sunday night as we complete our study of the book of Proverbs. Hope to see you really soon. Until then, take care and God bless.